The Wolf and the Magic Chain. Asgard, high above the earth, was the place where the Norsemen of old believed the gods lived. There stood the great palace, Valhalla, and there lived Odin, the great Allfather, who was king of all the gods. Now in Asgard, with the gods, lived a great wolf, with huge jaws and strong, sharp teeth. He was fierce and savage, as wolves are, but Odin had allowed him to live among the gods in the hope that gentleness and kindness might in time tame even his fierce nature. His name was Fenris Wolf, and Odin hoped that in time he might learn to be the friend of the gods. However, as time passed, Fenris Wolf grew no gentler. Instead, he grew bigger and stronger, and his teeth grew longer and sharper. Soon he was so big and strong and fierce that only Tyr, the brave god of war, dared to go near him to feed him. Odin saw that Fenris Wolf would never be tamed and that he would only be a danger to the gods. "We must make a strong chain and bind him with it so that he can do no harm to us," Odin said sadly at last, but Fenris Wolf was now so big and powerful that only a very strong chain would bind him. Odin ordered a heavy chain with thick, strong links to be made, and they took it to Fenris Wolf. "We wish to test your strength," they said to him. "Here is a chain we have made. Let us bind you with it, and then see if you can break it." Fenris Wolf gazed at the chain. Then he allowed the gods to bind him with it, for he was not in the least afraid of it. When they had finished, he stretched his powerful muscles lazily, and the chain snapped with a clinking sound and fell to the ground. The gods crowded round and praised Fenris Wolf and pretended to admire his strength. But they went away secretly very worried at the ease with which the great wolf had broken the chain. "We must try again," they said, so an even stronger chain was made. "Surely this will bind him," Odin said, and they took it to Fenris Wolf. "Here is a thicker chain," they said. "It would take great strength to break this one, for it is stronger than the other one. Let us see if you can do it." Fenris Wolf looked at the huge links of the chain they held out and smiled, for he was none the least afraid of it. He sat quietly and let them bind him with it. Then he got to his feet and stretched his powerful muscles. The chain held, and the gods began to think that this time they were successful. But a second time Fenris Wolf stretched his muscles until the pressure on the chain was so great that the links burst and the chain lay in pieces around him. Once more the gods crowded around Fenris Wolf, praising his great strength, but at heart they were all despondent, for they despaired of finding a way of chaining the great wolf up, and it seemed that his strength was increasing day by day. They held a council to discuss the problem of chaining the wolf, for he was growing so fast that it was obvious it must be done quickly, and finally it was decided to send a messenger to the dwarves, who lived in their dark caverns beneath the earth. The dwarves were skilled at all kinds of metalwork. They spent their day hammering away in their forges, making all kinds of wonderful things from the metals which they took from the earth. The messenger sought out the dwarves and told them that the gods wanted a chain which was so strong it could not be broken. "We can do what you wish," replied the dwarves, "but it is a difficult task to make a chain which cannot be broken, and it will take many days. It cannot be done quickly." They set to work at once to make the chain, and when finally they had finished, it was fine and slender and so smooth it seemed to have been made from strands of silk. It had been forged from the roots of a rock, the sinews of a bear, the spittle of a bird, the breath of a fish, and the sound of a cat's footsteps. They gave it to the messenger, and he returned at once to Asgard. The gods were delighted with it, and they went at once to Fenris Wolf and told him that they had yet another chain to test his strength. During the time it had taken the dwarfs to forge the chain, Fenris Wolf had grown bigger and more powerful, and he was certain that no chain could bind him, so he was not at all worried. He allowed the gods to take him to an island in the middle of a lake, and there they brought the fine chain which the dwarves had sent them. When Fenris Wolf saw it, he became suspicious and backed away, growling in anger at the gods who were trying to chain him. "Surely you are not afraid of being bound by a chain," taunted the gods. No chain has been able to hold you yet. Are you afraid that your great strength has gone? I do not trust your chain, growled Fenris Wolf. It is too fine and fragile for an ordinary chain. There is some magic in it. The gods tried to persuade him to be bound and try his strength once again, and at last he replied, I will consent only on one condition. One of you must put his right hand in my mouth. The gods looked at one another in horror, and at first no one would agree to the wolf's condition. But at last, Tyr, the brave god of war, stepped forward. He put his right hand into the wolf's mouth, and only then would the wolf be quiet and allow the other gods to bind the chain around him. Now let us see how strong you are, they said. Fenris Wolf stretched and stretched, but his great muscles could not burst this chain as the other had been burst. Then he struggled and strained and fought, but however much he tried, the chain held, and it only seemed to become tighter. Finally, exhausted, Fenris Wolf realized that the gods had tricked him, and he would never be free again. With a roar like thunder, he closed his jaws hard on Tyr's right hand, which was still in his mouth, and bit it off. The ground shook to his roaring and struggling, but the gods could see that the chain would hold for all time, and the great wolf was no longer a danger to anyone. They fixed the chain to a rock so that the wolf could never break free and return to their home in Asgard with Tyr, who by his noble deed had saved them, certain that Fenris Wolf could now do no harm.